2, 1. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 19th rendition of the Government Operations and Regulations Committee meeting of the Metro Council. We do have a quorum with Council members Hancock, Benedict, Porterfield, Sledge, Swope, Withers, and Young present. Thank you very much. Before we begin the items written on the agenda, we're going to take a few minutes to talk or get an update and reminder about the November MOU between Hub Nashville and the Department of Emergency Communications. Aaron, would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, Chair. Hancock, I'll speak on the pair's behalf. I'm actually reading the paragraph Aaron wrote, so that's got to be half.
Wow.
In November, the Department of Emergency Communications, I'm Steve Martini, by the way, I serve as the Director of Emergency Communications. In November, we entered an MOU aligning Hub Nashville with the Department of Emergency Communications rather than Public Works at the time, now NDOT. Really just seeing a lot of similarities in our tasks. We're both call centers. We both answer non-emergency type calls from the public, and really we're able to leverage in this partnership the ability to receive non-emergency. We take those calls at 911 and at 8600. The potholes, the animal problems in the backyard, those types of things that a police officer, firefighter, or medic aren't the right response for. 311 is designed, Hub Nashville is designed for those types of services. So our alignment allows for those calls, those callers to get connected to the right resources more quickly and efficiently, frees up our 911 dispatchers to answer those 911 calls more quickly and efficiently, which is also important. And we just wanted to share that with this group and as many council members and chairs as possible, so that through the budgeting process, as you see that mention of DEC and the Department of and Hub combined rather than Hub and NDOT, that you kind of remember that occurred in November. Available for questions, of course.
All right, Councilmember Young.
So currently, if someone does call in to 911, the way it's set up, are y'all able to transfer them directly to 311 from there, or does that caller then have to hang up?
Right, we don't transfer the caller to 311. Typically, we can enter that call into the Salesforce Hub Nashville solution, just like any citizen would. So we've taught our folks, if this is a Hub type solution, they can enter that call directly into Hub to be handled by the appropriate resource. To the converse of that, if you call 311 and there is a 911 type emergency, they do have a direct kind of secret squirrel 10-digit number that's going to be direct to us to be processed by dispatch.
Okay. I've heard the radio ads recently. I like those. They're yeah. Like there was one about music, loud music, and I'm like, yeah. I guess if you're 911, your emergency operators should they be entering the stuff in Hub or 311 if we're trying to like teach the puppy to pee on the pad? Do we need to make the puppy pee on the pad?
Sure.
Because you're talking about their time being used on non-emergency stuff.
Historically, we've entered those calls anyway or referred those individuals to call that other department. This actually kind of cuts that response in half because we are putting it to the right place rather than asking the citizen to hang up and call that other solution. Most of these aren't 911 calls. They're actually that 862-8600 number that has been publicized for just ever.
Yes.
And that's one piece.
Okay.
I was just going to add that when you call the Hub, the very first menu option is police, fire, medical, mental health response. Throws you right to the 8600 dispatcher. When you call 8600, you'll have an option for the Hub. So both folks can connect to the right place if you listen to the menu without ever speaking to someone and putting it in the wrong spot.
Okay. Cool.
That's a good point. Thanks for pointing that out.
Does anyone else have some questions? All right, well, there's nothing to vote on. It was just an informational item. And now we will move on to the agenda. Thank you very much, Ms. Martini and Ms. Williams, for your time. You're welcome to stay because we are quite a group. I'm sure you're going to be entertained. The first resolution that we have on the agenda is RS 2021-1473. I think they're going to get some martinis, by Councilmember Withers. It's to exempt Bay 6 at 1101 McKinney Avenue from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit pursuant to Section 708-090 east of the Metropolitan. Thank you. Councilman Withers.
Thanks, everyone. This property had been a car car wash for many, many years. The reason that the address is 1101 McKinney is that it actually is a lot that faces McKinney. There was a house there at one point in time, well beyond the memory of folks living today, at least mostly. But it's been a car wash for a long time. That closed, and it sort of began to attract nuisance graffiti and garbage and things like that. And so I'm very grateful that the owner who acquired it, who invests a lot in small businesses, in particular in East Nashville, acquired it, and they've turned it into a series of small restaurant incubator spaces. And this is the one that will have.
Is this the wash?
Yeah.
Nice.
And so out in the front, it's got a patio seating area with a fireplace and lots of interesting things. I believe most, if not all, of the restaurant business owners are women or people of color. So it adds to the diversity along the corridor, and I think it's a really great addition to the Gallatin Avenue corridor, which has really undergone quite a renaissance during my time living there. So just request everyone's approval.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Councilor Bailey.
If I could, thank you, Chair, just a couple of comments. One is this is 2 blocks south of District 7. So I just want to make sure that people understand that this is supported by District 7. It certainly is not opposed by anybody in District 7. And I will say that as Councilmember Withers, Councilmember Parker, Councilmember Van Reese, as we have all worked on the south of Briley Parkway area on Gallatin Pike, and then certainly north of Briley Parkway, Chair, you have also been working on Gallatin Pike. This really is a cool thing that's happening as Councilmember Withers said, that as Gallatin Pike continues to evolve. We've got the highest ridership. We go on the bus line in the city, grab the bus, go to the wash, support a local small business, hopefully a minority business, and do so in District 6, and then walk down to District 7.
Is it walkable from your house?
It is not walkable from my, yeah, no, it's totally walkable from my house, but not for these old ladies' feet.
Good to know, good to know. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Continuing our success. And next, we do not have Councilmember Parker in the room. I didn't see anyone else signed on.
You have a letter.
There's a letter.
We do?
It's on the agenda.
Thank you. A letter to approve from Councilman Parker. Didn't even see that. And,
Move to approve.
thank
Second.
you. This would exempt Spicy Boys at 924 McFerrin Avenue from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit. Spicy Boys, you have to have something to wash it down. Do we have any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you again for being so agreeable. Next, we have RS 2022-1482 by Allen and Hancock to approve a contract between the Metro Government and GovernmentJobs.com, Inc. to provide an internet recruitment and applicant tracking system. We do have a letter to approve from Councilmember Allen, and I'm also here. We have some staff members in the room. Does anyone have any questions?
I move approval.
Thank you.
Could we please get an explanation from the administration, please, Chair?
Yes. Does anyone here have an explanation?
I don't know if I'm the administration. Hi, I'm Shannon Holm, the HR director. This is the existing, honestly, the entire platform that houses all of our applicant tracking, recruiting, et cetera. NeoGov, we've had it since 2006. They've kind of carved themselves in the market to do public sector platform by design. So it is the leading public sector software for applicant tracking. It reaches the largest public sector platforms through governmentjobs.com. But most importantly, part of the reason why they've carved such a niche in this market is because they are able to meet some of the unique parameters, civil service parameters and employment parameters that are pretty unique to public sector organizations pretty seamlessly. Things like establishment of eligibility registers and rankings and those kinds of things, which are not traditional in a private sector setting. So that's kind of what sets them apart and the reason why they've become they've kind of put a nice kind of corner on this market. But it is absolutely, I was saying to Mary yesterday, if we didn't have this software, it would completely shut us down, like almost in a way I couldn't understand. But we currently get about 30,000 applicants per year for our jobs. Our team reviews those, and this platform houses all of that. It's also very helpful that as we're looking for job seekers, it can actually retain the same information within that platform, allow you to apply and modify for other jobs in the government if you're interested. But really, it is an out-of-the-box functionality that allows us to meet the unique needs that our public sector with some of our civil service and employment provisions. That's really what sets them apart.
And how long have we been using this in Metro?
Since 2006. In fact, for what it's worth, Dawn is my witness, which is lovely. We actually contemplated whether or not there was another solution out there that could meet our needs in the same way, and we looked at another leading software kind of applicant tracking system that we actually thought, oh, this is a really good platform. We should move to it. Probably many of you have heard of it. And as we really started to look at the functionality and the business case to support it, we inadvertently found that like NeoGov uniquely, significantly met our needs much better and much cheaper through their existing functionality than even a leading person. Not because that leading platform wasn't great too, just couldn't meet the unique needs that we had. And so we didn't anticipate it, but we ended up making a collective business case together, ITS, HR, and kind of looked at it and said, it's gonna cost us more money and not meet our needs. And that one was a good one. It was a really interesting study that we didn't expect to come across. So we've actually critically evaluated this need in the past couple of years, and NeoGov still very much comes out on top.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much for your detailed explanation, and I totally believe you work for Metro government and not NeoGov. Just big fan, big fan. Okay, so now we'll move on to bills on second reading, starting with BL 2021-831 by O'Connell, Bradford, and Parker to amend section 62830, 17460, and 17230 in one fell swoop to amend the definition of short-term rental property not owner-occupied, and to amend parking requirements.
My understanding is I think he's gonna withdraw this on the floor, so I'll move to defer it.
The sponsors here, I believe.
Oh, hey, look at that. Is that what you want?
As soon as the chair recognizes me, I'm happy to speak to
I
it.
move to defer the bill indefinitely.
Second.
Councilman O'Connell.
I'm gonna withdraw it, so
Oh.
if we can do that before the indefinite deferral.
Would you like to withdraw your
I
movement?
would like to withdraw my motion, please.
Okay,
And just so people understand, we have continued the conversation with Germantown residents where this originated. I know we've got a couple of co-sponsors, but I think after the discussion at the Planning Commission and Councilmember Allen's working group, Germantown residents have some confidence in that process that will produce the outcomes they're looking for. So I'm gonna let them continue on as neighbors advocating for their community in the way that they prefer, and we'll do it that way.
so should we, yes?
I have a question/comment, but I don't want to go out of turn.
So we had a move to indefinitely defer, and then we withdrew that amendment, or that move, so we need another motion, yes.
I think, I'll ask Ms. Zeitlin, but I think
Yeah.
if I can just withdraw this with no action by the committee.
Okay, but you still want to ask a
I
question?
kind of do.
That would be
That's
fine.
fine.
If he wants to answer, he can.
I guess I'm sympathetic to the problem, and will say that one of the things that I've been talking to our new NDOT director about is parking issues and improving parking enforcement. It's definitely an issue in all kinds of pockets in my district.
Same in mine.
So I think continuing that conversation with them and making sure that, residential permit parking is something that we actually enforce.
Huge issue in Edge Hill and other parts of District 19, so. Yeah,
That's-
Councilmember, I'm all in on an effort to step up enforcement there. I think this bill has tangential implications for that, but it should not affect our ability to enforce it.
What was left of it in here?
Are some of the streets that in Germantown that have this concern residential permit parking, and they're frustrated because it's not getting enforced?
We do have one street in Germantown that is affected. But I would say the entire community is more, to something Councilmember Allen has talked about. When you have non-owner occupied, non-owner occupied, non-owner occupied, non-owner occupied, they can hold 12 per on a single street where we've got, 4 or 6 in a row. That's dozens of cars that may land there. They don't have, they don't have residential permit parking on the areas where some of the clustered non-owner occupied permit holders are, but that's really why they wanted to approach the parking issue.
So, one more question, I'll stop, I promise. So the non-owner occupied properties can get the residential parking permits?
Actually, I don't know if that's true. None are, I'm not aware of any being covered by that, but that's actually a great question.
I mean, for the permit, you have to put your license plate number in, but they get those guest things, which I think is kind of different, so.
I mean, you do have to get property owners to consent to it, but I don't know if you can get a residential permit if you are in fact not a resident. That's
Right.
probably worth exploring.
Right.
Again, this bill would not specifically seek to address that.
Gotcha. All right,
Bill,
thanks for
I thought
letting
you
me
withdrew it.
talk about a withdrawn bill.
Absolutely. Now we'll move on to BL 2022-1164 by Sledge O'Connell, Hauser, and others to amend section 93010 of the Metropolitan Code pertaining to construction noise, and there is a substitute.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, all. So what I'm gonna ask is that we put the substitute on and then defer for one meeting. So the substitute, and Director Herbert's here, and if I get anything wrong, I'll just turn to him. The substitute addresses codes department's wishes to make our, what is currently noise ordinance more enforceable. And the way to make it more enforceable is to not have a noise ordinance per se, but more of a work hours ordinance. So that's why you see in the substitute, the references to noise are deleted. The hours stay exactly the same. The reason for bringing this bill is because right now, the noise ordinance applies only to properties in R, RS, and RM districts. Meaning that any of our constituents who are in SPs or mixed use or anything that falls outside of that have no construction noise protections. So what I'm trying to do is get everybody to the same level playing field, essentially. The map that is on your desks and that Chair Hancock has a couple of shows roughly the properties that right now, residential properties that are not covered by our construction noise ordinance. So what I'm gonna do is ask that we recommend the substitute and then recommend a one meeting deferral. I have been in conversation with general contractors, with commercial builders. Just replied to an email from a concrete person. Concrete is actually a use that I'm trying to exempt essentially, because it's not really a noise issue and they need to work overnight. And then Councilmember O'Connell also asked for some specific considerations of the DTC. So I wanted to give time for it to come back and get potentially an amendment to that substitute that covers that.
Is it the pink that are not covered?
Pink are not covered, correct?
And Mr. Herbert, would you like to address the substitute?
It addresses effectively some of our enforcement concerns. For us, trying to enforce noise levels is a virtual legal impossibility. So let's just call it what it is, and if you want to limit the times that people can work, then let's limit the times that people can work, and that's not regulated by noise levels. So I applaud the substitute. I further applaud the deferral because I have received a lot of questions from the builder development community about this and the implications of this. And nighttime concrete pours are a major consideration, and I think the deferral will allow us to have further conversations to see if we can further tweak it to where it's more workable.
I'll move the bill. I don't know if we had a motion.
Actually, I'll move the substitute.
After I move the bill.
It's already been moved.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll move the
Let me
sub-
move the substitute,
And I'll
and
second
at the
it.
same time, for the sponsor's request, deferred for a week.
And you're.
Or one meeting, sorry.
And you're gonna,
Shall second, yeah.
okay,
I'll third it, fourth it, yeah.
super. All in favor of do we need to vote on the substituted bill first?
Separately, yeah.
Okay.
Then I'll just vote on the substitute, and then we'll have.
And I would also like to ask, does anyone have any questions for the sponsor or for Mr. Herbert before we proceed? Yes, Councilmember Allen?
I think I'll defer to your
Oh, yeah.
committee
Okay.
members first.
So I want to make sure I understand. I mean, I applaud, this is great. And, I think I've gotten actually some emails from folks in your district about this issue. I think they reached out to both of us. Some of them were even like visitors to the city. And so the bill, the map we got here, the shaded pink, is this bill just also pulling in those areas and the rest of the residential areas, or is it just applying to these?
No, pulling in, adding in. So what you're seeing is SPs, mixed use, OR, anything that has a residential zoning component. That's not currently.
And I haven't read it, so it's saying you can't work, is it contracted work or anybody, in those?
It doesn't apply to like the typical sort of like home improvement DIY stuff. This is the construction level work.
Gotcha, okay.
Same hours that we have right now, which is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which Councilmember Benedict sponsored a couple years ago. And then in the summer months, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
It's outside construction.
Outside, yeah.
But I didn't think any of them were 6 a.m. No, you're right.
Summer hours.
Yeah,
Summer,
8 to
summer,
6.
Yeah, summer.
Thanks.
It establishes instead of a noise, I think it was 70 decibels in the current code, instead of a noise threshold, it establishes an outdoor construction threshold. So.
Outdoor, okay.
Yeah, also, as was basically practical before, internal stuff like painting and electrical and all that kind of stuff wasn't gonna be hitting that 70 decibel threshold. It won't be caught by this either.
Right, okay. That makes sense. Thanks.
So in the first paragraph, it still says the foregoing noise restriction. Is that intentional?
I'm sure it's not. I was gonna say, we can fix that.
We do have time. And Councilmember Allen?
Thank you. I have a related question because I had begun work on a bill for the really, really noisy parts of construction, like jackhammering. Councilmember Hash had a project that required jackhammering for, I think, months on end during COVID when people were trying to work from home, simply requiring now that there be a noise mitigation plan, because you had said that you don't have the teeth. You often ask for that, but you don't have the teeth to actually require it, and that it might be helpful to have that. And so I throw that out there only just as an awareness thing to maybe get some input from you, and would that in any way run counter to this or simply be complementary to it?
In my opinion, it's probably complementary.
Okay.
I think it's trying to get to the same result.
Yeah, largely just, and some of that is, in certain parts of town, there's nobody there at other times, and it'd be great to be able to work at night when nobody's there, although with all the mixed use we're doing.
Right. Yeah, and so everybody knows the genesis of this came about because in parts of the district that I represent, we have gotten to that point where we have a lot of SPs and MUs have come in, and then the next phases are coming in, and what happens is the folks who live, there was one instance that Director Herbert's aware of, that we had a water pump running at 7 a.m. on a Sunday surrounded by 200 residential units, none of which were in the RS or RM zoning. So just trying to get everybody sort of with the same level of protections, basically.
The impact to this, in my opinion, is going to be on commercial development in those areas that, in and around the downtown core, that are experiencing the commercial. The residential won't be affected by this bill. Residential construction already starts at 7 and ends by 7 anyway, so it's going to be the commercial developments affected.
Any other questions?
What are the if somebody breaks the rule, what's the consequence? Will they be made to stop, or will they be fined?
So what we do is when somebody violates any of our rules, say working on Sunday or noise, we give them a pass the first time. We send the building inspector out there, we inform them of the ordinance, we inform them what the law is. If they do it again, then we shut them down for 3 days. So that's my internal policy. If you're gonna violate the law one day, I'm gonna shut you down for 3 during the week, make it painful. So that's what we've done, but we'll give you a fair warning the first time.
Any other questions? Okay, and so we're going to vote on the substitute first. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll move to
Opposed?
defer the, and I'll move to defer the bill as substituted.
Thank
How many
you.
meetings?
Just one.
Just one meeting.
And then, does anyone want to second?
I'll
that?
second that.
Thank you. All in favor of a one meeting deferral?
Aye.
And opposed? All right. Thank you very much. And we have 2 to go. We're almost done. BL 2022-1168 by Councilor Stiles to amend section 92020 and 92060 to amend the noise provisions related to motor vehicles and to authorize the Department of Codes Administration to enforce excessive noise provisions.
Move to approve. Second.
And Councilor Stiles, would you like to address the committee?
I most certainly would. Thank you, Chair. So what this does, currently, all noise complaints can only be handled right now by MNPD. This will now shift it so the codes department during the day will be able to respond to noise complaints. I think, as we all know, COVID, people moving inside, there's a lot more noise happening during the day, whether it's people blasting music or, as included in the bill, modified mufflers. So it would be treated, clearly, codes will treat any infraction the same way as they do everything else. Enforcement would be handled by the police in terms of them giving out tickets. Codes will be sending abatement letters, and then if people don't comply, then they would be given a court date, same as usual.
Councilmember Young.
So, how is, with construction noise, for example, Codes Department can visit and hear it. On a motor vehicle, what do you propose that looks like if someone's muffler is too loud?
So-
What does the investigation per se look like for a codes inspector to kind of handle that?
So when I had this conversation with Monica, and I'll let you jump in where you need to. So it's set right now, so if with a modified muffler, the minimum distance is 25 feet. So if you have a setback from your house and you can hear, there's a difference between a modified muffler and a regular car muffler. So if that happens, what you can do, what I was told, you can, if it's, say, a neighbor, you can say this is where this is taking place. You could take a picture or a video, and that's something that you could be able to submit and say this is what happened.
Okay, I think that's gonna be quite difficult, and I mean, Director Herbert, you kind of follow along where maybe my concerns are that I don't know that, okay, we do this, but I don't know that this is gonna be the solution that folks might think it is, because, a motor vehicle it's not like the inspector can get in the car and drive by the house and be like, oh, well, it's parked in the driveway, it's not running. I guess, do you see what I'm saying?
No, I do, and Councilmember Stiles and I have had several conversations to kind of talk this through. It's admittedly problematic. However, I'm not going to say that there aren't instances where perhaps we could help. If there's a property that is repeatedly, pulling a car on, letting it idle, annoying the neighbors, and, I'm not going to say there's not an instance where we couldn't help.
Sure.
So, as long as everyone understands that we don't have the ability to effect traffic stops, we can't pull people over for noise, but there could be situations where it could be helpful. And so, in those situations, we're happy to assist where we can. Our process is one where we have to notify a property owner, give them a reasonable amount of time to cure whatever the problem is, then we go back and re-inspect. Is that going to be problematic in this scenario? Perhaps, but nevertheless, if it is something that we can do to help, we want to be helpful.
Understood. And certainly I've had several complaints over the last couple of years, and being able to have someone during the day that can address some of these issues would be helpful, because calling on MPD they're not coming from these complaints. They're just not.
No,
Council Lady Benedict, do you
not-
have a question? I'm sorry, I can come back to you, I just want to get around to everyone.
Thank you. I
Yes.
believe Councilmember Porterfield is first, but it's up to
Oh,
you, Chair.
Council Lady Porterfield, I'm so sorry, I was so focused on Director Herbert, but, yeah.
No worries. Thank you, Councilwoman Benedict. I definitely commend the sponsor because I know that we're having a lot of issues with noise out in our community, especially with the modified mufflers. I do have questions similar to Councilmember Young's. I mean, even with a house playing music that's too loud, that's typically happening at nighttime. And my understanding is y'all don't have codes enforcement at night. So if my neighbor's blaring music overnight or at 10 o'clock at night or whatever, you all come and inspect it the next day, obviously there won't be music playing. So is it, if there's a certain amount of complaints received, do you all send a letter? Like what is the process? I guess help me to better understand the process, because we want a solution, absolutely want a solution to the problem. I just don't understand how this fixes it.
This is daytime, this is not nighttime. So at night, that's 100% MMPD. So if you had a music complaint at night, you would still be calling the police. This is only during the day when codes is in operation.
So does
And
code,
Director Herbert, did you want to address that question too?
Well, also, if neighbors shoot a video for us, and if the neighbors are sufficiently annoyed where they would come to court, if we had to go to a warrant on it and testify, then we also do it that way as well. So currently for nighttime things, if neighbors shoot videos for us, we'll then start the process based on that video, and if we can get a commitment by the neighbor to come testify on our behalf,
And
prosecute the case.
And in my district, the MMPD has come at night for noise complaints like you mentioned with parties and radios and such.
I mean,
Is that-
people
Our
comes to your
involvement would be
district?
mostly during the day.
Right.
We make 6 hours for MMPD calls. Okay, never mind. That's another conversation.
Council Lady Benedict?
I'm sorry. Okay.
Go ahead. I had a follow-up, but
Yeah,
it's okay.
we're circling back for follow-ups, yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My questions were along the same line as Councilwoman Porterfield's, but I'd like to understand is if you had people 24/7, much like the police department that's available to the city 24/7, if you had codes inspectors 24/7, how would they be able to manage this? How many would it take for 532 square miles? And I mean, I think this is a great thing, and I commend the sponsor for it. My challenge is enforcement. We have a lot of laws on the books that we have a hard time enforcing because we've had budget cuts for a decade, and we haven't yet built the staff back up. So until such time that we can build stuff up, is it right for us to make the law? Chicken or the egg? Maybe it's right for us to make the law and then staff for it later, and we just can't enforce it right now. Maybe the answer is we don't do it now and wait till we have the resources to enforce it. I don't like that answer, but I also don't want to make unnecessary law. And so I guess going back to enforcement is where I think the crux of my concern is, what would it take? First of all, would you have an interest in having inspectors 24/7? And if so, what would it take to do that?
That's going to.
Point of order.
Sorry.
Is that on this bill as far as, because that's a long discussion that I think we would all love to have, and I think always the answer is yes, but I don't know that that's necessarily pertains to the meat of this bill.
If I may, Chair, I
With
think that it
respect.
does, respectfully, Councilmember Young, I think that it does, and that if we can't enforce this today because it's only a daytime ordinance, that, and the remainder and if the main complaints are in the evening, which is where they are in my district, then would it not make sense for us to consider something 24/7? Now, that's certainly from a broader discussion, that's for everything, absolutely. I'm speaking specifically to this, since this is something that happens at night, and our enforcement currently is only available during the day. Would it behoove us to have code staff at night, or 24/7 rather, to be able to enforce this? Potentially, maybe more, but that's not where I'm coming from.
I don't have a limited timer on here, but I do know we have a couple other things. Is that sufficiently said so that you can get Director Herbert to answer your question? We can just ask him theoretically, does he want the 24/7?
Would 24/7 assist in this? And if so, how would we accomplish that?
So Councilmember
Specific to this bill.
Stiles has already been exploring that issue, and we've been having ongoing conversations. It would be helpful. My concern is the safety of my inspectors. They are not officers, and for them to go on private property at night, I think is potentially dangerous. So for that type of scenario, I really think that we need to have the accompaniment of a police officer along with us.
And it would
Councilmember
be
Stiles
paid
is exploring that presently.
Thank you. That answered my question, Chair.
And then, thank you. And circling back to Councilman Young, did you have a follow-up question?
I did.
I'm sorry.
I did.
I'm sorry.
But I guess
My strategy.
I'm in no way opposed to this or what this tries to achieve. I just don't know that this is a logical way to go about it. I don't have an alternative to what would be a logical way of going about it. So I guess I would just caution the sponsor and others, as it is, if this passes and is publicized, I do fear this might cause more consternation for some of y'all than solutions, as far as upset constituents that this is not doing what maybe they think it should, or, well, this car's doing it, but I'm not opposed to this. I just do feel that is worth saying.
Councilor Porterfield, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, my follow-up question, it's somewhat similar to Councilmember Benedict. It seems as though codes, from my understanding, has been understaffed and that there's not enough inspectors to handle the current volume of codes complaints. So I'm just trying to understand very much along the same lines. I want a solution. I commend the sponsor for looking for a solution. How are we giving y'all more work and you're already understaffed and you can't get to what we already have on the books?
So I'm going to address two things at once, if I may, Chair. One, currently working on a co-response task force that is fire, police, health, and codes. Codes being the triage and whatever call that might be unsafe. Police would go with codes to a location. So that's a budget request I've asked for. It's 8 people, 3 to 11 or 3 to midnight. So that's in process, to answer that question. Also, another request that I've made is for additional property standards staff, because we all know they are understaffed. But another complaint that we all receive from constituents is, why do I want to put something in the hub? Who's going to enforce it? No one's coming, so why should I even say anything? And I think all of these things work towards us showing that we are making an effort, we've heard them, and we're also working to address code's situation with being understaffed.
Very quickly, we're expected, the consultants that we've hired are recommending that the Coast Department get 31 additional employees. Those are not property standards, those are other employees. Councilmember Stiles has recommended further on top of that, so.
The 8, is that what you said?
So the 8 is 2 from each department, so 2 from codes, 2 from fire, 2 from police, 2 health. So I actually wanted to get 10 property assessors, and then 2 of those come off and be on this team, and then the other 8.
So my concern with this is that, I totally agree that codes needs more staff. I don't think codes needs more assignments. And if we are going to be moving into the evening and having double staff, both police and codes, then that's extra money that our city doesn't seem to have right now. But that's my comment. And Ms. Benedict, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Thank you. I wonder if the sponsor would be okay, based on those budget requests, if we deferred this bill until after the budget process to see if those jobs are filled. I certainly am very supportive, and the director knows that I'm very supportive of rounding out his staff as much as possible. For every bit of work that they can get done, it means additional revenue for our city. Again, it's up to the community to make sure we develop correctly, but the more staff that we have, the more inspections we can get, which means that we're more responsibly handling development. So to that end, my question would be for the sponsor, would it be friendly to defer this until the first meeting in July in order for us to get through that budget request and see if there is additional staff to be able to handle this additional work?
I'm absolutely up for that.
Okay, I would make a motion.
Second.
First meeting in July.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor to defer to the first meeting in July. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are still unanimous.
I kind of want to vote no, just
Right, just to do it.
I thought this was gonna be it, because if this was gonna be approved tonight, I was gonna abstain. So it was gonna be our first.
Abstain against that. All right, one more item on the agenda. Final lap here. Bill 2022-1172 by Council Lady Allen, who has patiently waited through many bills. Thank you.
We've made a lot.
To approve a contract between the Metro government and CSS International for consulting, development, implementation, and managed services for Hyperion, EPM Cloud, HM Cloud, R12, and Telio software platforms.
Move to approve.
Second.
Council Lady Allen.
I'm deferring to the expert.
Would you like to address the committee?
Yeah, I mean, I sent a memo out to council on this. CSS is our implementing support partner for all of our Oracle software and solutions, and we're in various stages of projects that are being implemented or just got completed, like our budget system was just got completed and was used very successfully this year. So this is a new sole source 10-year contract, which at the recommendation of Michelle Lane, we're kind of moving to, instead of just a standard 5-year, we're doing it kind of more towards the life of the solutions behind it. So that's what this is for. And CSS has been competitively bid 2 times prior, so they haven't, but there's just not anybody that could support all these solutions that they did the implementation on.
Any questions?
Chair?
Yes, Councilman.
I'm a little chatty today.
You are.
Today.
Thanks, sorry. All right, so.
Order.
We have seen in other areas within government what long-term contracts have prevented us from being able to change in the future. Thinking particularly of garbage. Again, this has nothing to do with your software. This has nothing to do with any of this. What type of outs and or penalties and or if they don't perform, how can we learn from poor contract management potentially, and I don't mean that to any specific person, but clearly the garbage situation was poor contract management. Is this a good solution that allows us the flexibility to make changes down the
Yeah,
pipe?
it has the contract has all the standard, we can get out of it at our request, for just because we wanted to, or if, or for cause if they weren't performing. So all those kind of clauses are in there, and the intent when Michelle Lane and I spoke about this, and I've got a couple others that are going to be coming up next several meetings, so you'll be seeing a lot of me. But the intent is that if we basically replace the solution, so if we stopped using the Oracle kind of footprint of solutions and went to SAP or something else, then that would automatically trigger a new RFP for a new, vendor partner for that, to support and implement that solution. So all those ways are to get out of it. And we're not locked in for life. If they do something wrong, we'll end the contract and go out to bid.
And I'm sorry if I made you answer questions comparative to the.
No, that's fine. No, we have to learn.
You should have no experience with, so.
Yeah, no, we have to learn
Thank you
from,
for that.
every painful lesson we need to learn from in all areas. I agree.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that concludes the April 19th chapter of the Government Operations Regulations Committee meeting. Thank you for coming and for being so agreeable.
Feel your.
You know I'm back.
Okay.